We're getting a beep.
Oh, sorry.
Let's stop the recording for a second. Let's just stop the recording for a second because we have a beep sound every time somebody's entering the waiting room, but it seems to be stopped now.
Is it stopped now?
Stop now, so I'll start the recording again. Okay.
All right. I'll start the recording again.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Maria. Okay, great. Thank you. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Scottsdale Big Book Study, where we will study the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Today's date is the 21st of September, 2024. My name is Johan, and I'm a recovered compulsive overeater from Sweden, and I will be your host for today's study. Our co-hosts are, we have Maria, Nancy, and Rob co-hosting today. So thank you for your service. If you have any questions during the meeting, please contact either myself or any of the co-hosts by private message in the chat function. The chat function will be disabled until 5 minutes before the question and answer session. Please note that the speaker Harlan G will be recorded for the duration of the study. However, the question and answer session which follows will not be recorded. We ask if you can please make sure to keep your microphone on mute at all times during today's study, and also turn off your video if you're exercising, eating, or if you need to step away from your screen for any reason. During the meeting, we will post a link to our 7th tradition. This money goes towards the cost of our Zoom account, the cost of uploading our recordings, and we also send contributions to our intergroup and WSO. We'll post a link to the previous week's recordings. These are available by clicking on the link that will be posted in the chat box. So everybody, without further ado, here he is, the man, the concept, the one and only Mr. Harlan G. Take it away.
Thank you, Johan. Thank you very much. I'm so glad to be here, and I live in Arizona, which is very hot climate. And when you get to September 21st, which is the autumn equinox, it is a red letter day because this means summer is over. So it's sort of like you get your participation trophy. We have made it through another summer here in Arizona. It's over. And you may get some hot days, but you're not going to get the blasting heat of the summer. You're just not going to get it. And the mornings for the last, I would say, week and a half, 2 weeks have been pleasant and wonderful. And it's just, now it's going to be paradise here until mid-May. Until mid-May, it is just going to be like out of a dream. Like Victor was saying before the meeting, Victor said, I'd like to wake up and say, hi, God, rather than something about why, God, why am I awake or something. I'll let Victor do that later in the Q&A. But there was a cute little question that he says to God, well, you wake up now in Arizona, and instead of, oh, my God, I have to go out, it's, oh, I get to go out. It's beautiful. It's just fabulous. So September 21st is definitely a red letter day here in the Valley of the Sun. It is just a red letter day. Anyway, we have been talking about step 4. And, you know, steps 3 and 4 are by far the most misunderstood steps. You know, it is astounding to me how many people make something out of these steps that was never intended. There's 3 parts to the step. They're very, very simple. And the first part of this is the resentment part. And the resentment part consists of 4 columns. The first column is, who or what do you resent? It's not always a who. I had a deep-seated resentment for a very long time against this expression, blood is thicker than water, because I don't have blood relatives. For a long stretch of my life, I didn't have one. Now I do. I have a daughter, and she lives in Brooklyn, New York. She lives in an area called Crown Heights, or Heights, Crown Heights, Brooklyn. She lives in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, New York, and she is a blood relative of mine, my daughter. But for decades of my life, I had no blood. I don't have cousins. I don't have aunts and uncles. I don't have brothers and sisters. I don't have any of that. So I had a resentment against that expression. I also had a resentment against things like music and art, which are all, you know, lovers and couples and love and family and, you know, and that kind of thing, because I wasn't part of that. And we're going to get more to that a little later on this morning. And then, so it's first column of the resentment inventory is who or what do you resent? And the second column is why do you resent them? 19 words or less, please. Don't write me a novel on why you resent your mother-in-law or why you resent your next door neighbor, because that just makes it worse. It doesn't make it better, makes it worse. And the third column is, and if you need edification on the basic instincts, I covered that last week. And if you need that, I would suggest strongly listening to last week's session. What basic instinct or instincts are affected by this resentment? So again, for edification on that, if you weren't here last week, go to last week's tape. And it's a good tape to listen to because it explains the basic instincts of life. And so that is important. And then the fourth column, which is on page 67, what was your part in this resentment? What did you do to set the ball in motion? And what defects of character in you set the ball in motion? What defects of character in you made you do this to set this resentment in motion? So somebody will ask invariably, well, what if I had no part in it? Just leave it blank. Now, when you look at your inventory, if you have a bunch of resentments where you have no part in it, you're probably not really in touch with what's going on here. But if you were raped, if you were molested, if you were abandoned, if a crime was committed upon you, if some serious injustice was visited upon you, you probably had no part in that. Well, the other thing, though, that is important to remember is you leave those blank. You had no part in that. But if you have too many of them, that is something I would definitely look at. You're probably in denial at some point. The other thing I would definitely look at is the idea that you can still hang on to these resentments is going to kill you. Resentments are the number one offender. And the reason that we go through this inventory is to take a business inventory like that to look at the stock in trade. And if you're hanging on to things that are hurting you, you want to get rid of them. The process of the fourth step is to uncover, discover, and discard. That's uncover the things in your life, discover the things that have been blocking you from God, and discard those character defects, discard those behaviors that are actually hurting you quite a bit. The fear inventory, first column, who or what do you fear? And if there's a resentment in connection with a fear, it goes in the resentment inventory. If there's no resentment in connection with this fear, it goes in the fear inventory. I don't have a resentment that I'm going to die someday, but yet it's a fear that we probably all have. So that goes in the fear inventory. Fear inventory are for things that have no resentment in connection with them. Fear inventory, column 1, who or what do you fear? Column 2, why do you fear it? 19 words or less, please. Column 3, what basic instinct or instincts are affected? Column 4, what is your part in this fear, and what defects of character were brought to the surface? I love the Joe and Charlie example. Joe and Charlie give this example. Charlie feared the IRS. And the reason he feared the IRS is because, second column, they were threatening to put him in jail and seize his bank accounts. Third column was the security instinct. And the third column was self-esteem. Third column was social instinct. What are people going to think of him if he gets thrown in jail? And in the fourth column, he puts, he didn't pay his taxes. He refused to pay his taxes. Well, what defect of character was brought to the surface? Selfishness, fear, all these various things. So he feared the IRS, but he didn't pay his taxes. So what did he expect him to do? So these are some of the things that we can learn about ourselves. Uncover, discover, and discard. Okay, the sex inventory, we're going to use 5 columns, and that's where we're going to start today, is on page 69. In this way we tried. 69, in this way we tried. But before we get to that, we're going to review the sex inventory. And before we do that, we're going to review quickly some of the ways we hurt each other in this area of sex. And a lot of people, when they do their sex inventory, they'll put down like Fred or Mary or Susie or Jasper or whatever. Well, what did you do to them? Oh, I broke up with them. No, it's not about who did you break up with. That's not what we're talking about here. How do we hurt each other in this area of sex? I don't want to go into all the details. Again, I point you in the direction of last week's podcast, but let's just take a look. Now, the obvious one is cheating. We all know about cheating. Cheating is the big one. But how did we use our God-given sex powers for something other than what they were intended for? If you had sex with someone and you didn't hurt them and they, whatever, there's a lot of people, they have consensual sex and then they go their separate ways or whatever. They have a relationship. It begins, it ends. That's not a harm. The harm is in using your sex powers for something other than what they were intended for. In other words, did you use your God-given sex powers to further your career? Love has nothing to do with that. You cared nothing for the other person. You were seducing someone, caring nothing for their feelings to further your career. So that's a way of doing something to another person, because how do you know they weren't into you? You're trying to give them the impression you're into them. You're going to hurt somebody when you do that. That is a sexual harm done others. Did you use your God-given sex powers to manipulate another person? In other words, did you use your sex powers maybe to seduce a friend of theirs, maybe to seduce someone who you knew when they found out you had relations with them would hurt them? Maybe you were mad at them, so you used your God-given sex powers for something, again, other than what it was intended for. Did you withhold sex? Did you withhold affection until the person came around to your way of thinking? Maybe you like the Republicans and they're a Democrat, so you'll withhold sex. You'll withhold affection until they come around to your way of thinking. These are some, again, but not all of the ways that we hurt other people. Were you lonely? Maybe it was a Saturday night like tonight. You didn't want to spend Saturday night by yourself, so you called someone and you had them take you out to dinner, knowing they would pay, knowing they were into you. You're not into them, but you used them for a free dinner, and you used them because you didn't want to be alone. This, again, is a sexual harm done other people. Did you use your God-given sex powers? This is the question that you need to ask yourself with your sponsor to know, should you put this down? Did you use your sex powers for something other than what it was intended for? And God gives us the sex instinct, the sex powers, so that we can recreate ourselves or for enjoyment. And if enjoyment or recreating yourself has nothing to do with this equation, and you're just using your sex powers to further your career, you don't want to be lonely, you're just using another person for something other than it was intended for, that's something that you'll probably need to put down on your sex inventory. And we covered the 5 columns of the sex inventory. Here they are again, and then we're going to move on. The first column of the sex inventory is Who did you hurt? The second column is, what did you do to them? The third column is, what instinct or instincts were involved? You'll find that the sex instinct is seldom involved. It's usually security, it's usually social, something like that. And then the fourth column is, what character defects in you caused you to harm them? And the fifth column is, what should you have done instead? What should you have done instead? So you see that it's a 4, 4, and 5. 4 columns for resentment, 4 columns for fear, 5 columns for sex. Now, I want to address something before we move on, because I think I'm not the only one that may be in this category. I think that people, from what I've seen in the 45 years I've been here, we run to extremes. Either they've had tons of sex and tons of relationships, or very few, if any. And so we sort of run to extremes in this area. And when I came in, I was 24 years old. I had never been on a date with a girl in my whole life. Not one time did I get a date with a girl. So I said, I don't have to do this. I've never had sex with anybody. No, au contraire, no, I have to do it. What will you do if you don't have anybody that you harmed in this area? Maybe you married someone very early in your life, and your relations with your husband or wife are fine and everything's good. You never really did this to anybody. Here's what I needed to look at. I needed to take the word sex out, and I needed to put in the word manipulation with personal relationships. Who did I manipulate? Did I befriend someone, not because I really wanted to be friends with them, but because I thought they could further my career? Did I befriend someone because I was just lonely? Did I hang with lesser companions knowing that I could do something different, but they were there, so I hung with them and we did stuff together, and I knew damn well that if I had some alternative, I would not be hanging with this person. And when I stopped hanging with this person, it caused them pain, caused them discomfort. So these are the things we have to look at. So I was a virgin for the first 11 years that I was in program. I had never had sex. I had never been on a date. So I had to take a look at these relationships, friend relationships, and I had to put them to the test. Was I above board with my friend relationships? Did I use people? Did I hang with lesser companions, knowing that they were better than nothing, but I really cared nothing for them? These are some of the things you want to look at with your sponsor, because these are where the disease lives. The guilt, the shame, the remorse. And maybe you don't feel guilty about it, but somewhere in the back of your mind, you have to know that when you uncover, discover, and discard by using this inventory process, I can guarantee you, not only will you feel 100% better, but the urge to kill yourself with food will tremendously decrease. So I'm promising you that this program works, and this is a major step in working it. So you're not going to want to skimp on this. Make sure your inventory is good, thorough, but not perfect. The biggest mistake I see people, the biggest 2 mistakes I see people making in their 4th step is, 1, they want it to be perfect. They want it to be absolutely perfect. You can have a perfect one, but it's not going to do you much better than an imperfect one. I'm not saying that you should deliberately lie. Don't worry about making it perfect. Make it fearless and thorough. If you leave something out, we have the rest of our lives to either go back and do a 4th step or do a 10th step, okay? God's not going to put your 4th step up on his refrigerator. We're not going to stand around and give you an award for doing the perfect 4th step. Do it good, get a B. B- is fine. Get it done as quickly as is possible. I give my sponsees 3 hours to do the 4th step. That's it. You know every answer. You know who you resent. You know why you resent them. You rehearse it enough times. You know what you fear, who you fear. You know the sexual harms you've done other people. There's nothing here you don't know. There's no reason to protract this process out weeks and months. I hear from people all the time. They've been working on their 4th step for months and months. First of all, that's horse hockey. Nobody works on a 4th step for months and months. What you're doing is you're telling me is you're successfully procrastinating it. And in the meantime, you're dieting with group support. How long can you diet? If you can diet for 3-4 months, that's great. But how long can you keep that up? And the best thing you can remember is get it done very quickly, and let's move on. There's no reason on God's earth to extend this like some people do. None whatsoever. You don't need any downloads. You don't need any booklets. You don't need any concordances. You just don't need that. You don't need to do anything like go to a store and get a downloaded form or pieces of paper with 4, 4, and 5 columns are more than enough. More than enough. Get it done quickly, and move on. Well, I can't remember the name of the guy or the girl, or put down girl in red shirt. Put down the girl I can't remember and move on. We're not going to get anywhere until you remember the girl with the black shirt or the guy with the red hat. Or, who cares? Move on. You know who it was. You don't have to know the name. It would be nice if you did. Just call him Mr. X or Miss Y or Miss Z or Mr. Q, whatever the hell it is, and move on. So many people get paralyzed, not because of stupid reasons. They get paralyzed because they want to be paralyzed, but there's nothing here to fear. Nothing. You think you're so special, you're so sexy, you're so this, you're so, we've heard it a million times. We've heard this a million, short of first degree murder, I have heard everything you could possibly hear on a 4th step. There's nothing you could do to shock me. Nothing. I've heard all kinds of stuff during my 45 years in this program. Get it done. Get it behind you. You have the rest of your life to do them again and again and again, but don't deliberately leave things off. Okay, let's go to page 69 in this way. What is a sexual ideal? Well, I want the girl to look this way with this color hair and have this kind of body. No, that's not what it is at all. That's not what it is at all. What this is, a sexual ideal, has nothing to do at all with the other person. Not one part of that has to do with the other person. None of the inventory has to do with the other person. I'm going to read the paragraph and then we're going to go back and talk about it. In this way, we tried to shape a sane and sound ideal for our future sex life. We subjected each relation to this test. Was it selfish or not? Very basically, am I in this relationship because I want to be in this relationship, because I love the other person or I like the other person? Or am I in this relationship to further my career? Am I in this relationship strictly for sex? Am I in this relationship strictly to get something out of this relationship that I feel I can get very easily? So am I here by mutual assent? Mutual assent just means we're both entering into it of our free will. We ask God to mold our ideals and help us to live up to them. We remembered always that our sex powers were God-given and therefore good, neither to be used lightly or selfishly, nor to be despised and loathed. I was very, very, very obese at a very early age. Very obese. And one of the things that happened to me was I became physically and I became emotionally emasculated. I had an idea in my head that I believe was true, that there was no way any female at my grammar school or my high school was going to find me attractive enough to go out with me. And I had ample evidence that that was the case. When I was a teenager in my 20s, I was morbidly obese, as I've told you. And I looked at the world through a fence from a long distance away. And I saw you guys and the passions of youth. And I saw you guys falling in love, and you had romance, and you had sex, and you had excitement in your life. And I really was hurting for a very long time. I will never be someone's first love. I will probably never be the love of someone's life. I will never be their first passion or their first anything like that. I will never know what it's like to have that summer love, or, you hear the music all around you, the shows, the plays, the movies, the art, the whole world is for lovers. And that is a part of the world that I was barred from because of this eating disorder. And I have paid a massive price for this disease. I have paid a massive price. When I was 35 years old, I went on a date with a girl in Chicago, and we started dating. I was 35. She had a dossier that was quite healthy at that time of men and relationships. And I was in my very first relationship of my life. And it was very scary for me. And I played from a desperate position. Desperate. And whatever she wanted, I was willing to think or do or say or go, whatever, because I didn't want to lose her. And that relationship ended. The next person that I met was a person who was 12 years younger than me, but they wanted to get married. And when I heard her say she wanted to get married, I was in. And we had a lot of difficulties that should have been paid attention to. We had a lot of difficulties that we should have listened and not move forward. We didn't particularly get along very well. She was constantly angry, constantly enraged, and I lived and shivered at her feet. And I became more like a son than a lover, more like her child than her lover, her husband. We did marry. I was scared to death of her. We fought, and she was always in a state of rage, always in a state of rage. And I stood there and walked on eggshells for 18 years. I walked on eggshells. We were more like roommates than we were like anything else. We were not like a husband and a wife. Physically, we had some sex and we had a daughter. The minute my wife became pregnant, that was pretty much the end of our sex life. That was pretty much it. We were done. So I lived once again platonically. We didn't touch each other probably the last 10 years of our marriage, 8 years of our marriage. We didn't touch each other. And we would sleep in the same bed, and that's as far as it got. If we touched each other, it's because we bumped into each other in the hall. We did our business together. I mean, I have a small business, a microscopic business, and she helped me with it. We raised our daughter. We did our house. We did the things that we did. But it wasn't a marriage. It wasn't a marriage. At the time, I didn't see this, but she mercifully divorced me in 2010. My business is selling on the phone. And by 2010, just about everybody had a cell phone and everybody had caller ID, and our business downgraded tremendously. And the lack of money coming in, coupled with the housing crisis, ended our marriage. What did I learn from that? What are my ideals coming out of that? Well, I'm in a relationship now, and this is my second relationship since the marriage. And I don't always live up to this, but I'm trying. I'm a work in progress, just like anyone else. I'm a work in progress. I don't want to be with someone that I'm scared of. I don't want to be with somebody where I'm walking on eggshells constantly. I also learned that the best person I can bring into a relationship is a recovered adult. She is not my mom. She's not my mom. And I can't expect her to be my mom because that's not fair to her. I never really had a mom in that sense. My mother loved me, but my mother was extremely limited. She was physically and mentally ill. My mother was not a nurturing, caring mother like most people get. She was just kind of there in a lot of ways. She did love me, no question that she loved me, but she was limited physically and limited mentally. I learned that in a relationship, you have to have some modicum of sex. I'm not saying it's going to be like the last days of Caligula. I'm not saying it's going to be like a porn set. I'm 70 years old. But I'm not dead. I'm not dead. So there's going to be physical contact. There's going to be physical parts to the relationship. I'm not good at them. I'm very limited in what I can do there, but we do have a physical relationship, or I'm gone, because I'm not going to do that again. I don't want to be someone's roommate. If I'm going to be someone's roommate, hell, I'll get a dog. I don't need that. I don't need to be or want to be someone's roommate. I don't need that. I learned that there has to be love and friendship in a marriage or a relationship. I had a really hard time being friends with my wife. We were very different people that got married for all the wrong reasons. She had a sister that was married, that had a kid, and she was going to be damned if the sister was going to get one up on her. She was going to get married and have a kid too. And I just happened to be the guy that was in her life at that time when those instincts and thoughts kicked in. It was a perfect storm. I was desperate for a female that didn't use the F word with me. And that dreaded F word is friends. They all want to be friends. You know what? My friend card is all punched up. I got all the friends that I need. I got so many friends, it's ridiculous. You've heard me talk over the years of friends I've had from grammar school, friends I have from vending at the ballparks, friends. I am loaded with friends. I'm very, very blessed in that area. I love them. They love me. I don't need any more friends. I just don't need any more friends. What I'm looking for is someone that wants to be more than friends. That's very hard to do. Women rule the roost when it comes to dating, and you guys figure that out. By the time you're 14, you realize you're the ones in charge. You're the ones that have all the power. And you figure that out by the time you're 13 or 14. Dating is a woman's domain. No question about it. Never has been a question, never will be a question. But I have to have someone that wants a little romance and a little passion, even though they may have had a lot of it before me and I've had some before them, not as much. That's important. That's important. It's hard to find, especially at this age, because a lot of women, once they're beyond childbearing years, they have adult children, they have grandchildren, they don't want to be the nurse and they don't want to be the purse. And they're done. They're done with all the bullshit that men have heaped on them for years. They're not into it and they're gone. But especially at this age, it's very, very hard to find anybody. It always was for me, but at this age, it's especially hard because, as I say, a lot of women, they're just done. They're just done. So many of them are off. They're off the market, you know. So dating for me has always been uphill. I'm 70 years old. I've had 4 relationships, 4. And most of you have had a lot more than 4. But what did I learn? Bring an adult. Don't bring a child. Bring an adult. Be self-supporting through your own contributions. The more dependent you are on somebody, the faster it crumbles. Bring someone who's recovered. Bring someone who's in recovery, because the disease will putrefy and ruin anything in its path, including a relationship. There's got to be some sex. There's got to be some passion. There has to be some commonality here. There has to be some area where we're coming together, where we're not just roommates. And the other thing I've learned is this TV ideal that you meet them and you fall in love and there's no work involved. That's not my experience. That's not my experience. So be prepared to work. And those are not easy. Those are not easy things to embrace, because we see on TV and in the movies and in the songs and in the art and in the poetry and all over the place, Norman Rockwell. You know, we're a family and we're the Waltons and we all love each other. I never realized how much work it was. I just never did. And so I wasn't prepared for it. And I was stumped. I was just stumped. Well, I still am stumped in a lot of areas, but the ideal is, and this is why we're talking about this, is that when you do your 4th step, you're not thinking or writing about what you want from the other person. It has nothing to do with the other person. It's what you want. It's what you want to strive for based on what you've learned. What did you learn from your life? What did you learn from your mistakes? And if you keep repeating the same mistakes, as I've done, you're going to keep getting the same failed results. I got Barney Rubble and Betty Rubble behind me, and Fred and Wilma Flintstone. And they're very much in love, and I put them up there today because we're talking about sex and relationships, so I figured I'd put them up there. Okay, so you should look at your ideals. You don't have to write them out if you don't want to. I write mine out, and I suggest people do that. But the bottom line is you don't have to. It's not prescribed in the big book. Think about it, though, and even if you're married or you're in a relationship that you have no intention of terminating, Think about what you can do to sort of improve your end of it. And that's something that is a product of this process of the fourth step. It'll make your life a lot better, a lot better. Okay, let's continue. Bottom of 69, whatever our ideal turns out to be, we must be willing to grow toward it. What does that mean? We need to work at it. We need to work at it. We must be willing to make amends where we have done harm, provided that we do not bring about still more harm in so doing. Maybe you had an affair. Maybe you're a man or a woman that had an affair with somebody, and you're not 100% sure that the person knows about it. You don't go to them and dump this dreck on them that you had an affair to alleviate your conscience, knowing that it's going to hurt them for nothing. Now, if you're sure that they know about it, you're absolutely certain that they know about it, it is absolutely something that you know they know, you can talk about it and you can make an amends for it. But you better be damn sure you're not going in there under the auspices of making an amends and causing more harm. We don't want to do that. Very important, very important. In other words, we treat sex as we would any other problem. In meditation, we ask God what we should do about each specific matter. The right answer will come if we want it. Very important. Sometimes we like to wallow in our garbage. You have to want to get better, and that's going to take work, and it's going to take owning up to the things you did in the past. Bottom of 69, God alone can judge our sex situation. Counsel with other persons is often desirable, but we let God be the final judge. We realize that some people are as fanatical about sex as others are loose. We avoid hysterical thinking or advice. I have some friends of mine who have very different lives when it comes to sex than I do. Very different lives, very different paths, very different dossiers, resumes when it comes to this stuff than me. Their lives are very, very different. Very different. Okay. Page 70. Suppose we fall short of the chosen ideal and stumble. Does this mean we are going to get drunk? Some people tell us so, but this is only a half truth. It depends on us and on our motives. Are you looking to improve, or are you looking to hurt the other person? If we are sorry for what we have done and have the honest desire to let God take us to better things, we believe we will be forgiven and we will have learned our lesson. Very important, very straightforward, doesn't need any explanation. If we are not sorry and our conduct continues to harm others, we are quite sure to drink. We are not theorizing. These are facts out of our experience. Are you withholding affection from your spouse or your significant other? Are you settling into, if they hadn't have done this years ago, you'd be different today kind of thing? Are you so pissed off that you can't let it go? It's going to not only ruin the relationship, it's going to ruin you. It's going to ruin you because that is going to catapult you back into the food. And not being in the food is why you're here. Hopefully. Why would you engage in behaviors constantly that are going to throw you back into the food? The answer is, I hope you're not. I hope you're not. So these are things to look at. To sum up about sex, I'm on page 70, middle of the page. To sum up about sex, we earnestly pray for the right ideal, for guidance in each questionable situation, for sanity and for the strength to do the right thing. If sex is very troublesome, we throw ourselves the harder into helping others. We think of their needs and work for them. This takes us out of ourselves. It quiets the imperious urge when to yield would mean heartache. Now, these guys were alcoholics, and they were a little different than maybe some of us are. Some of them had very extensive resumes when it came to the ladies. Very extensive resumes. Some didn't. Compulsive overeaters usually run to extremes. But these guys were alcoholics, and a lot of them had girlfriends on the side and so on and so forth. So this is where a lot of this is coming from. But it is God-given that we have to look at this stuff. If you're not sexually active, you're not involved with anybody, look at your other relationships. Are you hanging with someone that's really bad for you, that are very toxic, but you're hanging with them because you feel you can't get another friend? Are you hanging with them for some reason other than what God intended, which was a mutual assent friendship? These are the things you're going to want to look at if you're not engaged in sex or romance at this stage of your life. All right, let's move on. Page 70. If we have been thorough about our personal inventory, notice it doesn't say perfect. Notice it does not say perfect. It says thorough. It does not say perfect. About our personal inventory, we have written down a lot. We have listed and analyzed our resentments. We have begun to comprehend their futility and their fatality. Futile means it's without purpose. Fatal means it's going to kill you. Are you ready to give up that resentment against the person who wronged you or the institution who wronged you? Because if you're not, you're going to die in the food. In other words, is this the hill you want to die on? Is this the hill you want to die on? Was your dad such a bastard? And he's been dead now for 30 years. Was your dad such a bastard that you're going to let him kill you in the here and now? Isn't it time to give it up? Isn't it time to give it to God? I say that it is. Are you really aware that the payoff to the resentment is you can blame them for all the troubles of your life? It's about time we took some responsibility, because the freshness date on our unhappy childhood has expired. The freshness date on that marriage has expired. The freshness date on your conflicts over money or sex have expired. The conflicts that you had with siblings over nothing or over something have expired. Nobody has a contract in their pocket. One of the kids I went to high school with died this week. Maybe it was last week. I went to high school with him. I remember him when he was in 6th grade, 7th grade. I remember when he was a child. He's dead. Nobody asked him, was it okay? He had a heart attack in the middle of the night. He's gone. Nobody asked him or asked his wife or his children or his grandchildren, hey, is it okay if tomorrow he dies? It just happens. Are you thinking you got a lot of time left to straighten this out? Maybe you do. Maybe you don't. Maybe you do. Maybe you don't. Are you thinking that you're going to wait for this other person to wake up after an epiphany and just get it? How long do you want to wait before you can live in the freedom that God is offering you? How much of the disease do you want to ransack your life? Let's continue. We have commenced to see their terrible destructiveness. They're not destroying the other person. They're destroying us. We have begun to learn tolerance, patience, and goodwill toward all men, even our enemies, for we look on them as sick people. The more I live my life, the more I realize everybody's got something. There's a person that I know that is in these rooms that would look from the standpoint of just looking on paper that they would never be in these rooms. This is a person who grew up in opulent wealth. and other advantages, and yet they are compulsive overeaters, bulimics and anorexics, just like all of us. There's no profile here. The rain falls on the just and the unjust. The disease of compulsive overeating afflicts all people equally. I shouldn't say that. Let's rephrase that, because I believe it's a spectrum disorder. It falls on people randomly. It doesn't care if you're black or white. It doesn't care whether you're Lutheran or Catholic or Baptist or Jewish or Muslim or whatever, or atheist or agnostic. It doesn't care. You could be yellow, green, polka dot, doesn't care. And when it afflicts you, it is going to destroy you if it's left untreated. We have listed the people we have hurt by our conduct and are willing to straighten out the past if we can. In this book, you read again and again that faith did for us what we could not do for ourselves. We hope you are convinced now that God can remove whatever self-will has blocked you off from him. If you have already made a decision, which is step 3, and an inventory of your grosser handicaps, which is step 4, you've made a good beginning. Now, why is that sentence something I'm going to talk about? Because too many people do their 4th step, and when they're not catapulted into some Valhalla of recovery, some Asgard of recovery, some heaven of recovery, and they don't hear birds singing and the sky is opening up for them, they think they've done it wrong and they go back into the food. This is a beginning. This is not the end, it's the beginning. We have much work ahead of us. Do you remember when we talked about the symbol of AA? And there's an equilateral triangle on the title page that's not there anymore, but the first 3 editions it was, and they lost the copyright on it. And the equilateral triangle says recovery, unity, and service. Those are the 3 principles of our program: unity, service, and recovery. Recovery being the base, unity and service being the sides. Do you remember what surrounds that triangle? A circle. Why a circle? Because a circle is a symbol of perpetuity. Perpetuity. Why are some of you going to put wreaths in front of your house very soon? We're coming up here to the holiday time. You're going to take a wreath. That's an ancient pagan symbol of perpetuity. Okay? The circle never ends. It never ends. You are never done working your program. The 4th step is just a step. It is not the step. It is a step. There is much work ahead of us. Don't have unrealistic expectations of any of this. It is a process, not an event. Recovery is a process. It is not an event. Let's continue. If you have already made a decision and an inventory of your grosser handicaps, you have made a good beginning. That being so, you have swallowed and digested some big chunks of truth about yourself. I never realized in a million years that I was as scared as I was. I never realized I was as angry as I was. I never realized how selfish and self-seeking I was. And I never realized how dishonest I was. I lied when the truth would have served me better. I hurt a lot of people in my life. I've said stupid things, and I continue to say and do stupid things. I'm sometimes unthinking. Sometimes I just don't know why the things hurt me the way they hurt me or affect me the way they affect me. And I guess I need to look at that stuff. I'm far from perfect. And this process of seeing how scared, angry, dishonest, selfish and self-seeking, yeah, I am, really helps me. There's 5 character defects, not 100, not 1,000, 5. Selfish, self-seeking, dishonest, resentment, and fear. That's it. These other things like being late for work or not working up to your potential, those are not character defects. Those are behaviors that emanate from character defects. Those are behaviors. So as we finish this chapter, we're now going to go into the chapter of steps 5 through 11. And we're going to begin that next week. But just before we leave chapter 5, how it works, we're going to see that step 3 and 4 are quick, simple steps. We don't have to make something out of them that's not there. In Yiddish, we have a word, ungeblosen. And ungeblosen means overblown, overdone, overthought, overwrought. We don't want to be that way with our program. We want to simplify things. If something in this program is too difficult, you're probably doing it incorrectly. It's a simple program. You know exactly who or what you resent. You know exactly who or what you fear. You know exactly who you've harmed in a sexual sense. And the bottom line is there's not one thing in these steps that you don't already know. It shouldn't take that much thinking. It really shouldn't take any. Quickly up one column, do this column, then do it. We read them across, we do them vertically. I don't want you thinking about why do you resent Fred, or why do you resent Mary, or whatever it is. Just list Fred, Mary, Joe, Fred, Sam, whatever it is. List it out. Then go back and do why do you resent them, or why do you fear them, or whatever. Get it done. Quickly get it done. There's no reason to overblow it, overthink it. There's no reason. You're shooting for a B. You're not shooting for an A. You're shooting for a B. It doesn't have to be perfect. Okay. Before I turn you back to you or I turn you back to Maria, I want to remind all of you that the OA birthday is coming up. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday weekend in January. And I'll give you the exact dates here in a second. It's the 17th to the 19th of January in Los Angeles. Registration for your hotel is open. Registration for the convention is not yet open. I would suggest getting your hotel room. This convention is going to be magnificent. It's going to be marvelous, just marvelous. You're going to expand your God Squad. You're going to love it. You're going to love this. This is a wonderful convention. I will be there, God willing. Many of you will be there. Please come. This is a wonderful, safe environment. You're going to just love it. Okay. I'm going to ask you no math and no food questions. No food, no math. And I went yesterday and I had another day of my life where I did not use algebra. I did not use geometry. And I did not have to worry about Beowulf or the Canterbury Tales or the Old Man in the Sea. I used none of those things yesterday in my life. And so far, I have not used them today either. So I don't know why we spent so much time on them in school, but I have not used algebra in over 50 years. So far, I'm making a good life without algebra and geometry. Never in my life have I had anybody confront me about my knowledge of algebra or in geometry since high school. Okay, so I'm going to turn it back to them, and we're going to do questions and answers. And